I tell my clients, you are going to do this work. You're going to heal on the deepest subconscious, cellular, spiritual level you may have ever tasted so far. And when you do, there's two best case scenarios on the other side of it. Best case scenario number one, you change the dance and your partner, rises with you. You guys heal together, recreate a completely new partnership. Best case scenario number two, you do the work and it calls him out. It really shows like he's not willing to evolve with you. He's not willing to repair. He's not willing to apologize, whatever it is. And at that point, guess what? You're no longer self-abandoning.
Welcome back to the Power and Purpose podcast. I am so excited for today's guest. Becky, thank you so much for being here. And she is a trauma informed marriage coach. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Vanessa. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. My signature question that I love to ask everyone is, who are you and who are you not?
I love that question because it's easy for me. My mind goes to immediately rattling off the things that a lot of people find this collective, even fun identification with, like human design. I could tell you I'm a Manny Gen. I could tell you I'm an Enneagram type 9. I could tell you I'm a Virgo. We've got all of these systems, to characterize a set of qualities or personality traits. But when I think of really who I am, I try to do a deep dive to wash away all the different ways that I've learned to manage trauma in my life or survival mechanisms and what I thought was personality traits. So I would say I'm a unique creation of God, universe, source, higher power, whatever word listeners are using. I'm a unique creation in that right. And I'm someone who craves intimacy and connection and harmony and loves offering that and facilitating that among other humans. And I'm also not so unique in the sense of I'm just one of everybody else. We're so connected and we're so intertwined, more so, I think, than many of us realize. And so that's the best way I could answer that. I'm uniquely made, but also not super unique.
I love that. I love it. So let's dive into a little bit about your journey. When was your turning point? And I know that there were some challenges in your marriage that led maybe before the turning point or during the turning point, but what did that look like? What exactly was happening in your life?
Yeah, so it was years ago, close to about 4 now, and it was year 10 of my marriage. I had 2 kids, little kids at the time. And my husband and I were separated and seriously considering divorce after a decade of efforting to try to fix this toxic cycle we were noticing ourselves fall into really regularly. When we were good, we were really good. But when we weren't, it seemed like every month we would fall into this cycle of chase and run, I would call it at the time. As I went on and learned more about myself and did therapy and self-development, I learned different words along the way to characterize our dynamic, like anxious attached and avoidant, codependent and addictive. All of these different terms I learned to fit the bill for what we were experiencing, but still not changing the actual patterns, still not changing how I felt. And so it was when we were separated and I was up at 3 a.m. scrolling on Instagram because that's what you do when you have insomnia and your world feels like it's falling apart. That's when I stumbled upon a coach that at the time, this was the only thing that felt clear and resonant in my life. Everything else felt confusing. I was questioning myself, questioning everything. Nothing felt good. But her content, she was a relationship coach, was pulling me in, and I found myself Netflix binging and all I knew was this small, still voice to get in her space no matter what. So I just kept leaning in. I ended up booking a call with her, and that was the turning point that we can get into the details of how that decision changed my life. But it led to, spoiler alert, my husband and I ended up not divorcing. We ended up healing and then growing and then getting to a point where we learned how to thrive in connection, really for the first time we had ever known in a consistent way.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a quick question. And I just want to back up here for a moment. Because I know that when we're in relationship and we're in toxic patterns, sometimes most of us don't recognize it or we undermine it and we don't think it's as big as is, or as significant as it is, or the impact, we minimize the impact on our kids or our family or on us. So what is it, what was it feeling like? What was the feeling of those toxic patterns?
Yeah, I love that you brought it up because it was super easy to minimize, especially because we were in leadership roles. I mean, in the church that we were a part of years ago, me, I was a leader in my company. Like, people are telling us, you guys are this, couple to look up to, and you have all these good things going for you. So I would minimize the hell out of what was actually happening behind closed doors. And what that was is, traits like codependent, anxious attached. There was a lot of hyper vigilant me monitoring him, and that came in the form of wanting to see who's texting him or checking his search history or where are you? Why are you 5 minutes late? My mind and body jumping to worst case scenarios. It felt like constantly at the time of there's some other girl in the picture, or your pornography is turning into an addiction, or you're hiding something from me that I'm going to find out later is going to be really painful. And so that monitoring and constant hypervigilance was pushing him away and avoiding more and creating more insecurity on my end. So those are some of the practicals, but if we were to boil it down, I just didn't feel emotionally safe and he did not feel at peace. And we were caught in that loop for years.
Yeah, yeah. And in this part of the story that we're in for you, if someone else is like in this right now, like what are some tips? And I don't know if it's about raising awareness or communicating with their partner. I'm not sure what the solution is, but like what do you think some of the tips are so that they're not minimizing it and they're not trying to bypass it and ignore it and just hope like everything's going to be different the next day?
My encouragement would be to, I would say awareness, but really awareness about the body and the nervous system and how your body holds the trauma of whatever you've been through. Two buzzwords of, avenues to go down to explore more about yourself and learn more about yourself is really attachment theory, the attachment patterns like anxious attached and avoidant, disorganized, as well as somatics. So I know both of those are buzzwords, but truly, like those two avenues, without leaving spirituality, out of it, I think that connection we have to our higher power, God, needs to be kind of, a part of all of this. But really, attachment and somatics, raising your awareness of what your patterns are and where you're storing things in your body and doing the work from the neck down. Because a lot of our mainstream modalities of healing, traditional therapy, only focuses on the neck up. It's a lot of talking and verbal processing and reading and listening to podcasts, which are all things I advocate for. I have done those my whole adult life and I still do. But when I was only working on myself from the neck up, guess what? Talking about my trauma was only keeping me stuck in my trauma. And so it wasn't until I went from the neck down and learned what's my nervous system doing?
Mhm.
Where is it holding these old stories, these old traumas? How do I go into the body to move trauma out? That's when it changed the game.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that was when you were working with the coach?
Yeah, this coach, I didn't know it at the time, was going to be my first introduction to somatic work. And so she was the first person to teach me how to regulate my nervous system, not just say, I'm detached, because that's what you're supposed to be in a healthy relationship. Not clinging, not a stage 5 clinger like me, but actually feel detached. Like, feel, oh, this is what safety feels like in my body. Even when he doesn't respond to my text right away or get home right on time or is in a mood, his moods always meant threats to me, like you're in a mood, you must hate me was
Mm.
the immediate correspondence. So learning how to not just know better, but really feel better in my felt sense experience she was my first introduction.
That's so beautiful. And were you doing this work alone or was he in it with you?
Alone at first, we were separated. So I remember making the decision. It was a big financial investment, which at first I was like, should I loop him into this? But at the time we were separated. So I knew it was a gut pull to do this. And then later told him, hey, I invested this much in a program. And he was basically like, good luck. I hope that works for you. Kind of sarcastic. I was like, thanks. I really hope so too. That was a big investment. Like, ah. So no, he wasn't. He was very just that was his kind of attitude at that point. There was so much resentment between both of us towards each other that he was not on board at first.
Yeah. And then what was the journey after that? Like, did he just kind of see the change within you, which I think is how a lot of our relationships work, but you let me know like how that happened. Did Was it you doing the internal work and that like, created the impact? How did that go?
Yeah, it's hard to condense into a podcast, right? Because it's going to be like a series of almost imperceivable shifts that add up and reach to this tipping point where the dynamic shifts. But if you're to ask him that question, what he always says is when he did come over, because we had kids, he would still come over for dinner. We just had certain boundaries, like him and I weren't hanging out talking. But he noticed for the first time, whoa, Becky's energy is different. She seems grounded. She seems like she's really got herself. And then the universe allowed it to happen. It was during COVID that all of this was going down. And one night when he was gonna leave after dinner, I told him I wanted to go out for a girls' night. I'm gonna be out late. If you want to actually spend the night, sleep on the couch, you're welcome to. And so he did. He woke up the next day. He had COVID and he was staying at his mom's at the time. And his mom was like, "You are not coming into my house with COVID." So, cue the 14 days of quarantine that him and I all of a sudden entered that we were not signing up for. Like, whoa, we're supposed to be separated. Now we're going to be in each other's energy for at least 14 days. And that was when we started to have some of the most healing, honest, open conversations we'd ever had in like all 15 years of knowing each other at that point. And it was in those moments where he was opening up about things he never felt safe to open up to me about. And seeing my reaction was, whoa, Becky has got herself. She's not freaking out. She's not clinging. She's not blaming. She's not doing all the things that she normally does. So that was the shift. And more moments like that led to rebuilding some pretty shattered trust between us.
Yeah, powerful, powerful. What do we need to know about how trauma impacts our relationships beyond the attachment styles? And I know that's included and I know it's powerful, but like what are some other general impacts? Because yes, we're unique and then we're not so unique, just like you said before, right? At the beginning of this, like there's some patterns that show up when our trauma is unresolved, when we're carrying that emotional weight. We try to stuff it back down. It seems like it's too much work to deal with. We get into a relationship, we stay in that relationship. Like, what are some of the impacts that you see in your work now with your clients?
Yeah, I like to say trauma's like the third party, this invisible third party in your marriage. It's like that elephant in the room that you can't see. But if you've been through trauma, which who hasn't at this point in 2025, and haven't been able to process that, and resolve that actually on a body cellular level, then it's gonna be sending a frequency. It's gonna be sending an energetic vibe. We use the word vibe, right? I vibe with this person, I don't vibe with that person. It's going to be emitting a frequency that's either connecting and safe and open-hearted, or it's going to be blocking. So obviously we're in relationship because we want connection. Some of us feel safer in connection and closeness than others. Some of us feel more safe, right, with space and independence. But ultimately, if we're in a partnership, it's because we want to go through life in connection with someone else. So what trauma does is unknowingly, it's like we're holding up signs to our partner saying, "You can trust me, you can come close to me." But the sign actually says, like, the fuck you can. Like, no, you can't. I cannot be trusted. I cannot be approached. I am not safe to come near. And so it's the invisible stuff which can feel really annoying and aggravating and confusing when you're in it because you want to be able to put your finger on it. But it's more this sense of something feels off is what a lot of couples say, or we're just communicating in circles, having the same conversation over and over and over again. We're stuck in this dance.
Yeah, yeah. And from my personal experience, and you could tell me if this is common with your clients and maybe your situation in the past, is because I had unresolved trauma, it's like my coping mechanisms were like my main thing that I was doing all day, right? I wasn't in my true self. I was in the conditioned self. Some of those were protective. Some of those were to kind of keep me from being bored because I was really restless,
Yeah.
like all of those things. And it's like, and that became that third party. My coping mechanisms became the third person in the relationship. And the person's like, well, you're always doing this, and then you're doing that. And then like, I feel like I can't approach you. And so does that show up as well, those coping mechanisms?
Yeah, I love that. And this is what I like to call the somatic F bombs. So you've got fight, flight, those are the main ones people have heard of. Then we've got freeze, fawn, flop, and then the ultimate goal is frolic, when we're in this playful, open hearted, curious, connected state. But those patterns we developed wisely. Our nervous system wisely adapted to whatever stuff we have been through and learned how to keep us safe by a fight response at one point in our life, or by flight, freeze, whatever the thing was that helped us for a time. And then we get to our adult lives and it's like, oh my God, this has reached its expiration date. This is continually pushing my partner away, or inviting chaos, or inviting negativity, or unnecessary pain, right? So those are the coping mechanisms that we can get curious about and learn. Sometimes, where did it originate from? Sometimes it's our body replaying the past as if it's happening in the present. And when we can tune into the root of it, we can learn to feel safe now. It's like, oh, we don't have to fight anymore. This isn't my dad threatening me. This is my partner. Like, he's in this with me, things like that. And so that's a really important piece, getting familiar with your own nervous system responses, not demonizing them, not shaming ourselves like we got to kick this addiction or kick this habit because we suck, but actually honoring the wisdom in it and then learning something new.
You talk a lot about how like the body keeps the score, and I read that book, and I've done a lot of trauma work in my career too. And it's so important, but I feel like some people like until they experience it, they actually don't know. And so they keep going to the couples therapy, or they feel like the talk therapy is the way, and they're like, well, we've been going to talk therapy for so many years, and like we're still like looping in these circles. And so what's your insight on that? Is it a combination of both most of the time? Is it one over the other? I know it's probably different for everyone. And then what are some tools and tips that people can do if they are in talk therapy, or if they're just doing somatic work and maybe they need some of the talk therapy and they feel like that might be a missing piece? What's some of your insight on that?
Yeah, really good question. So, when it comes to somatic work, just so people know and we're on the same page, somatic just means of the body. Soma is body. And so neck down work, right? Working with the nervous system responses, all those F bombs, learning how to go into the body, resolve and move trauma out. And the reason why it's important to at least focus here and have a foundation here, to not ignore it, is because I'm just going to geek out for a second, Vanessa. We've all got this vagus nerve. It's a part of our nervous system. So it goes from the base of our skull to the bottom of our spine. And it's like the super highway of information in our nervous system. And 80% of all the information that flows and is being communicated is going up that vagus nerve from the body to the brain. Only 20% goes from the brain to the body. So all those neck up modalities, they're awesome and they may feel like they're making some progress, or you at least feel better leaving the session most of the time. There's also instances where it's like, "Oh my God, I left that therapy session more traumatized than I came in." But for the most part, it's working with the 28%. So you're going to feel some sense of some things happening, something shifting. But you also, what I gather from so many women that I've talked to now over the years, is I feel like a salmon swimming upstream, or I feel like I'm spinning my wheels at best after decades of doing this work, or re-traumatized at worst. So when you incorporate the somatic piece, that's when you're leveraging the natural flow and design of your body. You're working with that 80%. You're not a salmon swimming upstream. So, what that might actually look like practically is, if you're in a state of chronic fight, flight, freeze, there's a lot of functional freeze and high achieving women who are kind of going through the motions, but scrolling their phone, can't rest, can't slow down. It's just this like go, 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 but zombie locked in focus of productivity. It just depends what state you're in to see what tool to grab. So when I'm first working with clients, I'm going to ask, what state are you in? Are you in fight mode? And they're like, yes, I'm constantly irritable. I'm anxious. I'm yelling at my kids. Mom rage. I'm yelling at my partner. And so if that's the case, we're going to really try to expel the energy from the body. We might introduce some somatic shaking, some bouncing, some movement, some breath of fire, which is a yoga, really exhaling out the mouth. This is going to be discharging the energy instead of trying to trap it in, keep it all together, sit up straight, button up. We're not trying to do that with somatic work. We're discharging. Now, if they're in a freeze state, it's going to be a little different. We're going to be wanting to do more gentle movements, more, really slow, warm, like self hugs, getting massages. We're not trying to do a HIIT workout or a lot of shaking or sacred rage session or screaming at this point. It's going to be slower, yoga flow or pressure to the body, some containment holds. It's really like a thawing out of the system because your system's been on overdrive for so long. So, depending on where a client is at, it's going to be a different resource. And that's where it can be really helpful to work with a practitioner because there's so much out there now. Our algorithms are inundated with try these 5 grounding practices when sometimes grounding is not what you need to do. Like it sounds good, but if you're in a, let's say, flop mode, that's where you're depressed, can't get out of bed, you're kind of like melting into the ground. You don't need to ground more. You're gonna melt away. Like we need to do some activation. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And then I'll just add in my insight too. It's like sometimes people just recommend meditation to everyone. It's like, and it's like, I mean, yes, meditation can be golden. It just depends on your intention and where you're at in your life. But there was a time where I was even using it for disassociation, right? Like leaving my body and like having a hard time getting back in. And it was like, no, 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 I need to do the Kundalini. I need to do the embodiment practices. I need to kind of feel the tension in my chest, like you know, like work with that, not just like meditate and go out. So I love that you said that about grounding. It's literally about getting, whether it's grounding or meditation, try not to just take the one size fits all recommendation. Professionals like Becky, it's like, okay, where are you at and what's going to be the best protocol for what your body actually needs. So I love
Yeah.
that.
That's a perfect example because if you're super in your head, meditating can fuel that even more. You're going to have maybe more intrusive thoughts or rumination or, yeah, dissociate because it's like, this is so overwhelming. So that's a great example.
Emotional safety, let's talk about that a little bit more, or just safety in relationships. I feel like it's something so simple that we see now as adults, but but no one ever told us that that was like a thing. Like men need to feel safe in the relationship with their partner, and women certainly need to feel safe. Like if we're not feeling safe, like that can like break in, everything in a moment. So what are some insights on emotional safety? How do people know if they have that in their current relationship? Like how would they gauge that? Is it possible to gauge it? What type of awareness can they bring around it? And then what are some next steps?
Yeah, what I find, especially because I tend to work with more so the women who have the anxious pattern. So the fear of conflict, the fear of separation, emotional safety is big for them, but they tend to attract partners who are more on the avoidant end, where it is the opposite. It's that classic chase, run, dance. I think it's where the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, came. Like we can be very different, and that's the point. It's this opposites attract energies. So I actually don't find, at least in the work that I do, a ton of men who are saying I need to feel safe. It's not really a word I hear men use, but I do hear them say I want to feel peace. And a big way for them to feel that peace is when their partner feels emotional safety. But the partner, the woman, doesn't feel emotional safety, right? Unless his presence is there, and she senses peace from him. So, practically, what that looks like, at least you and I talking, from a woman's end, is attunement. It's this felt sense resonance connection, this open hearted, like, I feel him with me right now, not just mechanically, not just going through the motions, like, all right, like you want to talk again, like, okay, here we go. What do you need to say? That might be them giving their best, but that is not going to be her feeling safe. She's going to feel like that's actually even more disconnecting and triggering for you to be here in your body or your words, but your heart be totally shut off and your eyes, elsewhere, not making eye contact, body turned away. And so, what often creates emotional safety for women, and this is a big learning curve, it's not skills we have, it's not skills we're taught, but is for her partner being willing to learn, okay, how can I really offer her my presence? Just really be with her and really hear her, see her, not try to fix her. Super hard for men. They're super solution oriented, but so much of the time, a woman needs to just be clear and say, I either need a hug, help, or to be held. Those three H's can be a practical kind of litmus test for her and letting him know, like, I just need a hug right now. Sometimes it's that, like, just hug me and tell me I'm pretty, is what I tell my husband sometimes, especially if I can tell he's not in a mood to really receive me. But sometimes I need help. It's, oh my gosh, like, I'm starting to go down this road of imagining stories in my head that you don't like me or you want to leave me or there's a prettier woman than me at work, whatever the stories are, trying to catch them as soon as possible and saying, I would love to just get this out there and have you help me, tell me the truth and reassure because I don't want this to turn into, crazy rumination, intrusive thoughts in my head. Like I need help. And then sometimes it's just, I need, what did I say? Hug, help, and then to be held. Sometimes I just want you with me. Like I don't need anything. I just need you to be here, let me vent, not fix me. So it's a two-way street. The woman getting really clear on what it is she needs in that moment and doing her work on her side of the street to regulate her own nervous system. That's her job. But then also being really clear on this is what would help me feel safe in this moment.
Yeah. One of my partners, I used to tell him, I was like, "Hey, can you just be the root chakra for us right now?" And there's a couple of different S's in one of my yoga practices that we would talk about. It's support, safety, structure, security, and stability. I think those are like it. And so I would be like, "Can you just be the root chakra, like structure, support, safety?"
I
And
love that so
it
much.
kind of worked, right? And like he can kind of, and when I would say those few words, he was like, okay, she's kind of overwhelmed, so I'll be the root chakra for right now, and then I'll come back and like talk about what we really need to talk about. But yeah, and I love that you tell your partner like, hey, just tell me I look pretty and give me a hug, like. And I think that's a good recommendation for anyone listening. If you can just have like a couple of words or a phrase that you could say to your partner without maybe explaining everything, because sometimes you might not be available, or you might feel too overwhelmed to do that, or things just might be moving fast if you guys are in passing, like coming in and out of the house. But if you just say a few words or have like something that you could say that would kind of signal to the other person, like, or to your partner, that you need that support, like you recognize there's a deeper conversation that needs to happen later, but right now you just need that presence. So
No, that's beautiful. And especially our day and age. I mean, we're just living in the most fast-paced day and culture ever, so it is so common for us with our most intimate relationships to feel like ships passing in the night. So sometimes just being grateful for if it's just snuggling before bed and we just have 5 minutes before we pass out, and knowing that, okay, there may be grief that comes with that. I may wish for more in this season, but you can express that too. Like, oh, I wish we had a whole week just in Venice. No kids to put to bed, no work to do, but we just have 5 minutes right now, and I'm really grateful to connect with you.
what do you like absolutely love about the work that you do right now, and what do you find challenging at times?
What I love is the one-on-one client moments of the aha, hope restored, because the women that get to me are typically pretty hopeless. They've tried everything in their eyes known to man, and this feels like their last stop shop. And so they are at a pretty hopeless place and pretty skeptical that this can work. And so when I see that first sign of hope of, oh my God, I'm feeling a shift. I'm feeling like, okay, I'm seeing Susie over there have breakthroughs when she was about to get divorced last month. And, because it is a group program I do. So seeing that, but then also seeing the actual integration and the healing happen in real time. I also incorporate parts work as a part of my work. So if
I
people
love part work. Yes.
yeah. So if you haven't, those listening, done it, just think of the movie Inside Out. Riley has all these different like characters in her brain, and we have all of these different parts that have developed in our life too to keep us safe. And so when it's safe to go back in time, it's not the same for every client. For some clients, it's like we're not ready to touch childhood, and we may not ever be, and that's okay, and that's not necessary. But for some, it can be so powerful to go back to a moment and be able to integrate a part of her that developed because it had to, but was actually really terrified and really needed a hug or needed protection or defense and be able to do that now. That's the cool thing about the body is it is so just able to adapt and rewire and rewrite on like the deepest subconscious level what we have experienced, even if it's decades in the past. You can rewrite those memories now in your body.
Yeah. Powerful. Did you say the challenging thing too already?
Oh, challenging? Honestly, it's just the business side of it. Like if I could have somebody run all the behind the scenes business, like count the numbers, do the things, and I delegate as much as possible, but I'm just such a people person that that's my zone of yeah, what lights me up. So it's more the technical side of being a CEO, entrepreneur.
No, I know. Ditto, by the way.
Yeah.
That's systems. I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as we got connected, I'm like, oh, yep, she has this together, this together, this together. Great. So cool. So yes, the business side of it, that's just part of being like a conscious entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right? Beautiful. And then I had one really important question. I'm just waiting for it to come back to me. Okay, so here I'm just gonna play devil's advocate just for a moment. So yes, it's like, you know, releasing the trauma and healing and processing and doing all the emotional stuff can bring us back to our true selves, and it can help us recover a marriage or a relationship. Um, are there instances that you experience where people do the work and they still decide to leave that relationship? They just decide that it's, as a healed, I like to say integrated, as an integrated person or healed person, it would be more of a trauma response to stay in the relationship, versus leaving. So do you have any insight on that? Any experience?
I'm so glad you brought it up because I tell my clients, you are going to do this work. You're going to heal on the deepest subconscious, cellular, spiritual level you may have ever tasted so far. And when you do, there's two best case scenarios on the other side of it. Best case scenario number one, you change the dance and your partner, rises with you. You guys heal together, recreate a completely new partnership. Best case scenario number two, you do the work and it calls him out. It really shows like he's not willing to evolve with you. He's not willing to repair. He's not willing to apologize, whatever it is. And at that point, guess what? You're no longer self abandoning. You finally have the root chakra in place and the, foundation of I am safe in myself no matter what happens. At the beginning of the journey, most women can't even fathom it. And that's where I was. I was like, if I do this program, this marriage has to work because if it doesn't, I will die. And so, honestly, we don't even talk too much about the relationship at first with my clients in particular. It's all about establishing safety in her nervous system. And so, that's the beautiful part. And we celebrate both outcomes. You either heal and call him up or you heal and call him out, but either way, you win.
I love that. I really, I love that. Spot on. Amazing. So as we start to kind of bring this full circle, and we talked about, like how you got started on this path and your personal story, but I also want to hear like the spoiler alert, like how you guys are doing. And I know you do this work, right? Like we know that you've given yourself the transformation. You help other people with this type of transformation. But also like give us a taste of like what your relationship is like now and how it continues to evolve.
Yeah, I'm so grateful. And you're also asking me this like after Mother's Day. So I'm like extra elated and like on cloud nine from yesterday. But it just feels so emotionally safe. Back to that, it feels playful, it feels warm, it feels like we're able to talk about the past as this thing that how tragic that we both went through that, but we're not as attached to it as we used to be. We're not resenting each other. It's like we've got an interesting start to our story. There's tragic pieces, but like God, are we thankful for what we've built now? And so, I mean, just for us, when we're in our healed, safest state, we're very playful and we prank, and there's just a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of pranks and craziness and just silliness in our house, especially with our kids. And that's what feels so redemptive. That's what I'm grateful for because I felt like I got so serious and just so bitter and so like was this workhorse and just trying to find some source of dopamine and affirmation in my work because I wasn't getting it at home. And so for it to be now backward, flipped the other way, home feels like home and it feels beautiful. And then I get to bring that kind of energy and let it trickle into my clients. So, and we still conflict, but the difference is it can be safe now. Whereas before it was like neither of us knew how to do it. We grew up with very passive aggressive parents, parents that shoved everything under the rug. And so that's what we did for a decade. But now we're able to be super honest about like, this is bothering me. This is what's coming up in my body. This is what I need. And it's like, yay, look at us go. We're like grown ups now, talking through our problems in a secure way.
I love that. I love that. The playfulness, yeah, being able to talk about, the difficult things like in a way, like a mutually respectful way without the passive aggressiveness. That's like it might sound like very small to people, whether unless you're in a relationship. If you're in a relationship, you know that that's not small at all. That's like big gold, like you're as if
Yeah.
you're in gold if you could have that playfulness, because relationships can become so much work and they can become so serious, and a lot of people end up walking on eggshells, and we're like, okay, this isn't fun anymore, now it's just convenient, like, but I don't
Yeah.
want convenience, so it's like, then that becomes more of a draw. So really interesting stuff. I loved having this conversation. As we start to wrap up, what are like 3 tips that, depending on where people are at in their relationship and in their life, they could be general or very specific tips, um, but what are some tips that you have for women or men that want to, I was going to say improve the relationship, but maybe just come into more alignment?
I love that. Yeah. Alignment in their relationship. The first tip coming to mind is just to slow down. We touched on it lightly. Everybody knows it listening to this, but it's just really insane how fast our world moves. And we're human beings, not human doings. That's another common term, but it's just so true that we're designed to go at this camel's pace and we're living at rocket ship speed. So, connection and intimacy can only happen in a nervous system that feels present. Like that's really only when connection happens. That would be encouragement one is learn how to slow down. It can feel scary, especially for a lot of high achieving entrepreneurs. But even if that's just like 5 minutes where you go on a walk before starting your appointment, a pointless walk, like just leisurely stroll, like you have nowhere to go. It's not a power walk. It's just slow. My other 2 tips are just make one step closer to wrapping this conversation up full circle to what I started at the beginning, learning about one, attachment, your attachment style and your partners, and then 2, somatics. So whether that's following an account, Vanessa will link mine in the show notes and my podcast, or, getting a book if you like to read, audiobook. Those are my 3 tips: slow, somatic, and attachment.
Beautiful. And people could take a quiz for their attachment style. Is that like the best way?
Yeah, you can take a quiz for sure. If you look it up online, there's a bunch of attachment style quizzes, but also if you just Google images, sometimes even reading them, it's like, that's me, bingo. I don't need
But
to
yeah, you just
question.
know.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the last time I took that, I got secure. I was like, yay.
Yay, I've
Yeah.
arrived.
Well, that was 3 years ago. I don't know.
And they
Linear
can
healing is
change.
not linear. It's just it's like a roller coaster, but so good. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much. And how do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can DM me on Instagram, Becky_Aste. It's me in the DMs. And I'll link my website as well in the show notes. You can book a call with my team if you're interested in exploring work.
Amazing. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great day. Namaste.